Well, welcome everyone to our November Campus Captain Performance Anxiety panel. We're really excited that you're all here. And we are so grateful to have three wonderful panelists with us tonight who are going to answer some of your questions. So what we'll do is we'll spend a little bit of time at the beginning going through some of the pre-submitted questions that you guys sent in to us. And then towards the end, we'll have an opportunity where you can unmute yourself or add a question in the chat, and maybe something that came up while the panelists were speaking that you wanted to ask about. Please use the chat if something resonates with you or you have something to add to the conversation. We want this to be a really active panel. So we can start off, and I'll ask the panelists each to kind of introduce themselves briefly. So who you are, what you do, and kind of how performance anxiety and all of these topics that we'll discuss fit into your life and your work. Anyone want to jump in first? Yeah, Kristyna, go for it.
Hi, my name is Kristyna, but kids call me Coach K. I am the owner and founder of Game Changers Mental Performance Coaching. I work with athletes of all ages, all genders, all sports, on all things mindset. I do a lot of team culture, a lot of leadership development, but at the end of the day, it all comes back to how we think and how we approach situations. So when it comes to something like anxiety, especially performance anxiety, I was a collegiate athlete, I was a high school athlete. Before this career, I was a teacher and a coach at the high school level. And I feel like everything that I have done in my life has led me to this point, this moment, and this part where I get to share with others what I've learned. I'm a big believer that there is no one size fits all. Nobody should be put into a box. So anything that I share is either something that I have done and it's worked for me, or I have done and it hasn't worked for me. Just because it hasn't worked for me doesn't mean it's not going to work for somebody else. And a lot of the resources that I create for athletes come from my own experiences or the experiences that I get to have with the athletes and coaches and teams that I get to work with. So very excited to be here tonight. I have lots of notes on those pre-made questions, so I'm excited to dive in and share tonight.
Awesome. Thank you, Coach K. Whitney, you want to go next?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Whitney Miller, and I'm the owner of Transcend Training and Performance, and I'm a sports performance and mindset coach. Prior to this career, I was also a teacher. Kristyna and I have that in common. And I started my business as a way to work with endurance athletes and work with them on the physical piece, but also the mental piece. I noticed that when I started working with athletes, about 90% of every session we had was about what was going on upstairs. It wasn't really about the physical piece. So, big part of my work is mindset work, and I was a lifelong endurance athlete, so I wanted to bring that into my business, and I primarily work with swimmers, runners, and cyclists.
Awesome. And then Elias?
Hi, everyone. My name is Elias. I'm originally from Puerto Rico. I'm currently a second-year medical student here at Duke. I played college football at the University of Miami. And yeah, I'm just really excited to have this opportunity to talk about performance anxiety. I, had all different types of experiences as an athlete, from feeling on top of the world to dealing with injury to being scared of stepping foot on the field again. And even now, as a medical student, I get performance anxiety. I get testing anxiety. So just being able to talk to you all, to learn from you all, from Whitney and Coach K and all of you guys as well. So really excited for tonight.
Awesome. Elias, can you give us like a really quick 1-2 sentences about Jocks to Docs?
Oh, yes. Totally forgot about that. I'm so sorry. So Jocks to Docs is a nonprofit that me and one of my best friends, Ryan Risk, created. Ryan is a former teammate of mine at the University of Miami. He played football as well, and he's currently completing his first year of medical school. Yeah, he's going to be on next year's panel. He's doing his first year of medical school at Miami. So he's from Lebanon, I'm from Puerto Rico. So we kind of have that like mindset of coming from backgrounds where there's not a lot of attention placed towards sports, especially football. So Ryan and I created Jocks to Docs to kind of bring exposure to football in Puerto Rico. We've done a couple of camps back home where we bring like NFL players and former college football players to coach. We do free football clinics where kids can just go enjoy. They don't have to worry about paying for anything. And then we're now transitioning to kind of also helping pre-med athletes, student athletes who want to go into medicine, just kind of help them navigate that very turbulent process. So yeah, thank you so much, Kelsey.
Yeah, anyone who's in the MCAT process or the med school application process, Elias feels your pain, but
Yes,
we're
feel
glad
free
to
to
have
reach
him.
out. Yeah.
Yeah, we're glad to have him as someone we can refer you all to if you need. Cool. All right, well, let's get started. We'll dive into it. Let's start. Someone says, what are some tips for dealing with a coach who heightens performance anxiety by being negative or putting a lot of pressure on you and your teammates? What are your tips for communicating with that kind of coach?
Are we just jumping in?
Yeah, whoever wants to jump in, go for it.
Um, I'll kick it off. I'll start. So, I am somebody who I played college softball way back in the day, and I was recruited by one coach. That coach wound up being let go, and then I had another coach come in. And this was back before transfer portals, back before you even had that option. And I was very lucky enough to be on scholarship and to have parents who basically looked at me and said, "Suck it up and figure it out." Right? Like this is where you have to stay. You're not going anywhere else. So this new coaching staff came in and like my world was rocked because they weren't coaches that I wanted to be coached by. And it was a rocky 3 years. But during those 3 years that I was with them, there are certain things that I helped not only with myself, but with my team instill and like put in at the forefront of our mindset as we were entering practice. And there are things that like I literally still think about to this day. So I know that there's something to these pieces of advice. First is when you're working with a coach, it's remembering, or when you work with like other humans, is remembering that you have zero control over them, but you have 100% control over you. And yeah, you may not like the situation and you may not be comfortable and you may be frustrated, but that's yours to own. Like they're not going to change, or they don't have to change because they're them. So for me, it was really just digging my heels in and thinking like, what can I do in this situation? If I didn't like something, what could I do about it? And honestly, I wasn't the type of athlete to go talk to my coaches and be like, you're hurting my feelings. Like I just wasn't that person. I was somebody that kept everything to myself, but I felt like by digging in and like locking arms with my teammates, it really made the experience a little bit better. I will also say that I'm somebody who I preach a lot of listen to what's being said, not how it's being said. Our emotions do really awesome things in our head when we are feeling all of our emotions, and there's a part of your brain that sees other people, that could see other people as a threat to your safety. And when you are not getting along with your coach, it could be that your brain and your body just doesn't feel safe in that situation with them. So by listening to what's being said, not how it's being said, it's almost as if you're trying to calm down your own emotions. And it's like, hey, this isn't happening to me. Like this is happening and I'm experiencing it. And at the end of the day, it's coming up with what can I do to focus my attention on what deserves my attention, or focus my attention on who deserves my attention. So does your coach who's maybe yelling, does that deserve your attention at that very moment? No, because that's the part of your brain that's like being all like heightened by emotion. So it's what can you focus on? Because where your attention goes, energy flows. So it's you're placing your energy on something that you have no control over. Now, if you want to have a conversation with your coach, I definitely encourage a lot of the athletes that I work with to write things out and go in with an actual notebook, because 9 times out of 10, you're going to walk into that meeting and things are just going to fly out of your head. You're not going to remember. You may get emotional and emotions may get the best of you. You may cry, you may yell, you may shut down, and that's all natural. Like, you can't get mad at that. That's just your body's way of protecting itself in that moment. So if you have something to refer, you have notes on a paper, you're more inclined to like read the questions and like don't be afraid to look stupid or silly, right? Because who cares? You're going in there with an agenda and there's questions that you want to ask or there's answers you're seeking. So stand in your power and walk in there prepared. I will say that I have a lot of tips and resources that tonight what I'm going to do is after we after this panel has all these great conversations that we're going to have tonight, I am going to share. I create a lot of digital resources. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to jam pack my stories on over on Instagram with different like question starters, conversation starters, things that may help whoever asks a question or anyone else that's interested in having those hard conversations. I'll definitely provide you with some resources. But yeah, I think just remembering whatever you're focusing on, that's what's enhancing. So if you're focusing on the negativity, you're going to be affected by that negativity. If you're focusing on, hey, what can I do about it? Put the power back into your hands. It might give you a little bit more of that confidence that you're seeking.
I definitely agree with Coach K about controlling the controllables. So controlling yourself and controlling what you can control in the moment. The other thing that I always like to share with the athletes I work with is in moments of challenge, in moments where you feel like you can't get through them, what can you think about in the past that you can pull power from? So, any moment in the past that you have overcome, any moment that was challenging in the past that you got through, any moment that you had, you dealt with something difficult and you got through, what happened in the past and how can you take that power from the past and source it to the present? So that's something that can be one of those practice mentalities where if you come up against something challenging, thinking about in the past, where have I come up against something challenging? What did I do? How did I do it? How did I overcome it? Oh my gosh, okay, great. So I have all that power that I can pull into this present moment. So that's a strategy I like to share with athletes as well.
Yeah, I agree with everything that Whitney and Coach K said. I think the mindset that I took, especially with football, I think I've heard and I've been called things that no one should ever be called. And I've seen that happen to teammates as well. But my mindset was kind of to never take it personal, right? We're in an environment with so much heightened stress and heightened anxiety. It's even happened to me this year doing rotations, right? I like to think medicine's so similar to sports. Like I was just doing my surgery rotation and a lot of times surgeons will say stuff to you, they'll take stuff out of your hand. Um, and at the beginning, first couple of cases I was in, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm doing something wrong. Like I'm doing such a bad job. They must not be happy with me. But I think you come to understand there's so much stress, there's so much anxiety. Sometimes things are done or things are said in a way that, that doesn't justify uh, the way they were done or said, but you just kind of focus on the message, like Coach K said. You focus on the message, not the person, uh, or the way it was said. I think that that's the most important thing. Focus on the messaging. Focus on the situation, um, and I think just trying not to take things personal. And if something does feel like it was out of pocket, something feels like it was disrespectful, it's something that you feel you need to address. I think it's definitely appropriate to have a conversation with, in my case, right, with a surgeon or have a conversation with your coach, and just sit down with them, talk to them. And I think once those emotions are all um, not heightened to the extent that they were in a game or they were in a practice, I think everyone has a clear mind. We're able to talk things out. And at the end of the day, coaches are also people. They're gonna, make mistakes. They're gonna react sometimes ways they shouldn't react. And yeah, I think we also have to have a little bit of grace. Like I said, sometimes it's not acceptable, but I think just having that mindset was something that worked for me and has worked for me so far. But it's definitely very, very difficult.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up about how your skills from football kind of work their way into medicine. It's amazing how once you start adulting, as someone who recently started adulting, it's amazing how those skills can really be so useful in ways that maybe you didn't anticipate. Awesome. All right. So someone else asked, what advice do you have for athletes returning to competition from a major injury and the mental challenges that may follow a traumatic event like this? And whoever wants to jump in, feel free.
Yeah, this is definitely a tough one. And I prepared some notes and I struggled with this one because it is really traumatic when you have an injury. The biggest thing I can offer here is to focus on the present. So the way that I would like to do that is finding evidential proof that you are strong, capable, and you have healed from your injury. So what that might look like is gathering proof from practice, gathering proof from your day-to-day life, things that you're doing now that you couldn't do with your injury, or things that you've overcome that you couldn't when you had your injury, and using that proof as a space of visualization prior to practice or a game to help improve your confidence in your abilities. So really creating a specific honed in list of these evidential proof things, and then using that as your visualization prior to practice or a game. And that can really build your confidence and help you see that you are healed, you are capable, you are strong, and that period of time, although it was traumatic, has been completed and you're now in the present moment.
I love that. As somebody who suffered a career-ending injury and played through it for 2 years, I will say that it is really easy to get caught up in like your injury and the life that you had before the injury. So as you're coming back, I mean, I love this question because 98% of the athletes I work with are all coming back from injuries, or that's like a big mental block that they have. I came up with like my four big bullet points. And I think the first one is don't isolate. It's really easy to get in your own head and to, put your headphones in and just like go isolate and be alone. I remember specifically back when I was injured and coming back from that injury, scheduling, putting things on my calendar that made me be with people. So not just practice, but like in the training room. We would have study groups. We had pasta parties and team dinners. But I also remember like talking to my teammates about it. And my roommates at that time were just really great with, no, you're not sitting alone today. Or like, no, yeah, we know you can't go running, but like you're going to come and you're going to sit on the bike. And I would have teammates drag the bike out to the track for me as my teammates were running around the track. And like I'd be sitting on the bike, and just including other people in the fact that like I'm struggling really kind of was super influential in how I kind of recovered. And you know I think it was really important that uh, I just remind you to like don't isolate. It's so easy to isolate in today's day and age. We can literally go days without talking to people, but human beings are not meant to be isolated. We are a connective creature. So do your best to put things on your calendar where you have to get up and go out. I also think setting boundaries, understanding that you're not going to be as great as you were right away. And like you have to set boundaries on, okay, maybe you don't talk about practice all the time in your dorm room or your apartment with your teammates. Maybe it's saying, hey, can we do something else? Can we talk about something else? Setting those boundaries so that you don't snap, so that you don't fall into, some sort of overwhelmed depression, anxiety. Be your own advocate. I also think you need to have a little grace for yourself, because here's the thing: your brain is different after a traumatic event. Injuries, whether it's a small injury or big injury, your brain is different. But your brain is also so powerful because think about it, your body literally went through something and healed itself. Like that's magical. That's like pure magic. So taking a step back and just acknowledging that I'm going to be different because I am different, what happened to me changed a lot for me. And once you kind of just acknowledge that and give yourself grace, you open up the doors to like what could be. And it's again, where your attention goes, energy flows. So if you focus on, I can't do this anymore, and that's all you're focusing on, that's what you're sitting in. That's the energy that you're living in. But if you focus on, okay, I healed myself, I went through this big thing, look at me, I'm making a comeback, and really just set your sight on that optimistic stuff, like that's the energy that you're sitting in. And I think that, if I had to go back and remember, I remember a lot more of the happy times than the sad times. And I think it's again, it's surrounding yourself, making sure that there are people that are helping you push you along the way.
Yeah, I think injuries is one of those things where you kind of have to be a little selfish. I Same as Coach K, I kind of went through a couple injuries. I practiced for a whole semester with a torn hamstring. I practiced for all my fall camp with mono. I practiced for like a month with a torn ligament in my knee. And that was all because I kind of felt guilty that if I said something or I told my coaches or my trainers that I didn't feel good or I couldn't go, then I was letting my teammates down. And I think in the long run, that ended up hurting me more than helping me. Obviously, I know my teammates were really appreciative of that, uh, my effort and being out there. But I think um, it got so bad to the point where I, thought about quitting. I thought about taking a year off. Looking back now, I miss my team so much. I miss playing my sport so much to even think about taking a year off is insane to me. Um, but I think that for a long time I was injured. I would try to rush back. You're not feeling good. You start compensating. That leads to other injuries. I think the most important thing is being graceful with yourself. Like Coach K said, you're not going to be back to 100% immediately. It's going to take time. It's a really long process. That's why you have a recovery plan. That's why you talk to your trainers, you talk to your weight room staff. I think it's really important that you make sure everyone, your coaches, your trainers, your weight room staff, everyone has a plan. They know kind of the process that you want to go through to get back on the field. If you go back, you don't feel good, say something. I think there was a lot of times where, it took me about like 9 months to recover from my knee. I would go back and I would feel a lot of pain, but I would just stay quiet because I was like, "Oh, what will they think? What will they think? I was out for 9 months. That's plenty of time. Most people are back by then. They're gonna think I'm faking, or they're gonna think, this or that." And I think, like I said, it's one of those things where you just have to be selfish. You have to be graceful with yourself, and yeah, like I said, be vocal, be graceful with yourself, and understand. Think these things take time. The more you rush it, the faster you try to get out there without following the proper protocol, the more you end up hurting yourself in the long run. So it's a sport. People get injured, injuries happen. I think that as long as you're consistent with your recovery, with your training, you talk to your coaches, you talk to your trainers. Um, Everyone has your best interest at heart at the end of the day. And I think the other very important thing is also taking care of your mental health. I remember when I got injured, I went to the sports psychiatrist or sports psychologist, and I remember I had never spoken to a psychologist before, and I went into the room and like I spoke for like 30 minutes, and then the psychologist was like, "So what are you here for?" And I just felt like so defeated. I was like, I just like poured my heart and soul out for the first time to a person, and the response I got was, "What are you here for?" And I was just so disappointed. But I ended up finding another psychologist, and it helped me so much. Just kind of, like Coach K and Whitney said, you know, it's going to take time, but remember who you were before that injury. Remember, what you're capable of. You're in your sport for a reason. You're in your team for a reason. You didn't get gifted a scholarship, or you didn't get gifted an opportunity to be on that team. You're there for a reason. And the coaches know what you're capable. Your teammates know what you're capable of. just be graceful with yourself, take your time, heal, and take care of yourself mentally. That's, I think sports injuries, yeah, it's a lot of physical, but I would say in my experience, 80 to 90% of my recovery was more mental than anything.
Yeah, thank you guys. It's so helpful to think about, you know, rather than dwelling on how much an injury is hurting or sucks or whatever the case may be, and kind of figuring out ways that we can get back to that version of ourselves. Okay. Someone else asked, how do you deal with performance anxiety in the final stretch of the season? So postseason, championships, all of that good stuff. And there's more pressure and more on the line at these games, competitions. What would you suggest for that? And maybe Elias, you can also speak to in the context of school, like as we approach finals, like how do you take what you learned as an athlete and kind of apply it in the classroom? So whoever wants to jump in first, feel free.
So this is a really challenging one because it's something that I always tell athletes that you've got to have the mindset that you practice. So it's something that you can't just all of a sudden decide, oh, it's championship time, I'm gonna try on a new mindset. I mean, you can, it just may not work very well. So this is something that you've got to do from the jump. You've got to do in practice. You've got to do outside of sport, right? And the things that I like to share with athletes, there's a couple that I have written down here. The first one is be savage. So be consistent in the things you know you can control. That is a really big thing. And we've already kind of talked about that. The next is be a shark. So know that you've practiced overcoming challenging moments in games and practices before. So you can do that in the championship time that you're in. And then the last one is bulletproof yourself. So adopt this really powerful belief that you are skilled at putting yourself through challenge. So just that affirmation, that belief allows you to overcome challenge, not only in that championship time, but also in games practices outside of sport. So I think the biggest thing, I would share is that this mentality of being savage, being a shark, bulletproofing yourself, those are things you have to start doing from the get-go. And you have to build that as you go through your season and as you go through your life so that when you get to championship season, it's not, well, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to practice because I haven't been practicing these things. So that's my biggest point for that question.
I'll jump in. Um, I agree with everything that Whitney said. I will say it's why does things have to be different, right? Like post season, it's still the season. We're still competing, and odds are you've played these teams before, or that you've seen them, and like you've experienced like them before. Like you're going up against people that maybe that in the immediate postseason, and then the further along you get, it's why does anything have to change? If what you did was good enough to get you where you are, then you got to trust that process, and you got to trust yourself and trust your teammates of like, we did this. And it's like celebrating those accomplishments. And I'm a big believer of staying in that present moment, right? Like when we think too far ahead or when we're thinking too much on the past, it's we're not being where our feet are, and where our feet are is where you are needed most. And at the end of the day, you can't control the past because it already happened. You're either going to learn from it or you're going to relive it. You only have influence over the future, but you have influence over the future based on what you physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally do in this present moment today. So I'm a big fan of postseason. There's nothing. Why is the mindset of it has to be different? If what you've done has gotten you to this point, great. If in the postseason is where you really kind of lean in to your rituals, to your routines, really digging deep into the things that have got you there, the little things in life, or the little things at practice, and the little things that make you feel good. Like just continue doing them. And that's going to take you through for the rest of your life. Because I mean, listen, there is no postseason in real life. Real life is just a constant series of being in the present moment, learning, loving what you're doing. I'm a big believer in, in life, we're taught at a very young age that there are like good choices and bad choices. I'm not a fan of good choices and bad choices. And actually, I had a very long talk with myself today about this whole concept, like this mindset. There are just choices and paths. So you're going to make a choice, you're going to walk a path. If you don't like the path that you're on, you got to make a different choice to get on a different path. So postseason is a path that you're walking. And if you like what you're doing, why change things? And if you don't like what you're doing, okay, great. Now we have to make a different choice, which is a controllable activity. And then you're going to walk a different path. So for those of us out there that are experiencing the postseason jitters, just take that breath and remember that it's not really, take the label off of it. It's just, we're back at, we get to extend our season and we get to continue doing what we've been doing all season long. It's just that, yeah, there's a little bit more pressure on it. But again, are you paying attention to that pressure, or are you paying attention to the things that you did to get you to where you are right now?
Yeah, I really liked how Whitney and Coach K spoke about kind of your prior preparation has gotten you this far. Then why is there the need to change anything, right? Like at the beginning of the season, even when you're doing preseason and or fall camp, whatever you guys call it, uh, you start training with that objective in mind, right? To go as far as you can along the season. So I think that preparation starts with day one. And like I said before, same way that you're in that team for a reason, you have a spot on that team for a reason, you might have a scholarship on that team for a reason, is the same reason. You can have that same mindset as to we're in this, we're in the playoffs for a reason, we're in the championship game for a reason. Everything you've done until then, that's gotten you so far. um, I think that's the most important thing. Just reminding yourself that. I will say that I also do understand that you can have all that in mind, and then you get to the final exam or you get to the final game, and you feel good, and just like in one play, or you're reading a question, which happened to me. My second test in medical school, I got a panic attack. I didn't know what that was. I just remember that I was reading a question. I felt really prepared, right? But I was reading a question halfway through the test. I looked at the time. When I compared the amount of questions I had left to the amount of time I had left, it didn't really add up. It wasn't looking too good for me. And my just like heart just started pounding, and I started having palpitations. I would try reading the question, everything would like seem blank. I got super stressed and I wanted to leave. Like I wanted to literally shut down my computer and just leave the room. And I remember, I don't know why I had learned, I don't know if any of you guys know this, but like boxed breathing, where it's like you take 5 seconds to inhale, you hold your breath for 5 seconds, and then you exhale for 5 seconds. I did that a couple of times and it ended up working out for me. But I think just finding something, right? And it's really hard if you've never been in that situation to kind of know what works for you. Um, but in my situation, box breathing helped me and it got me through that. I didn't know it was a panic attack. Like my therapist told me later it was a panic attack. But just finding something that helps you get through that situation. In my case, it was box breathing. I think breathing exercises are so good. But just kind of having something in your back pocket that you can pull. Um, you know, like Whitney and Coach K said, you prepare the whole season for that, and I totally agree. But I also do recognize that these things can happen in the blink of an eye when you're least expecting it when you're in the heat of the moment. So I really recommend finding something like that. It doesn't have to be as silly as box breathing, but just kind of having something in your back pocket where if you feel like there's something you can't control, something that's kind of clouding your judgment or clouding your ability to perform at that right second, I think is also a really good idea.
Yeah. Thank
Kelsey,
you
can
for
I jump in real quick?
Yeah, absolutely. Go for it.
Because Elias, I loved everything that you said, and I love that you turned to a box breath. I think that's fantastic. So, just because, Kelsey, you mentioned that we did the performance anxiety workshop in Google Classroom, we talked a lot about having that ritual or that routine for not if you're going to go into panic mode, but when you go into panic mode. Because you have to understand that, like, anxiety and panic attacks, like, they come sometimes out of nowhere. And, like, if you're not prepared for what to do when you are in that situation, if that situation happens and you're not prepared, you're just going to shut down. Like, your brain's going to do whatever it can to protect you in that moment. So what I like to encourage athletes to do is to have something to think, something to say, something to read, something to do. And no, you don't have to do all four of those, but thinking, saying, reading, and doing something are all conscious brain activity, and conscious brain activity is activity that can keep you in the present moment. So I want you to ask yourself right now, like, I encourage all of you to brain dump. Take out a piece of paper and a pencil, and it doesn't have to make any sense, but brain dump all of your what ifs, every single worry that you have in your head, put it down on paper, and then go back to the top and look at everyone and say, okay, instead of saying what if this happens, say when this happens. So if making a mistake is like your kryptonite, instead of saying what if I make a mistake, I want you to say when I make a mistake, this is what I'm going to do, and talk through what you're going to do. So if you could think of something, right, have a phrase that you're going to say in your head, you could say something out loud. My favorite is to read. I am somebody who, when I was playing, I would always take a Sharpie, and I always Sharpied different words and phrases on my glove, on my bat, on my cleats. To this day, I do something similar, but now I just get tattoos. Anytime I like need a little inspo, I just tattoo it right on my body. It's fine. I can see it all the time. And again, I'm just a visual person. So like when I'm personally having a panic moment, I like to look down and visually see the words that I have tattooed there, and it brings me back to like that present moment, that calm moment. And if words aren't your thing, have something that you're going to physically do. Like Elias said, he did a box breath. That's great. A breath is such a powerful tool to bring you back to the present moment. But you could even crack your knuckles, you could fix your hair, you can untuck and tuck in your shoe. My favorite, when I was an athlete, and I also played field hockey growing up, but my favorite was bending over to tie my shoe even if my shoe wasn't tied. Right? Like, just taking that quick moment that you know you're about to go into panic mode and just bending down and fake tying your shoe. And the whole point behind having something to think, something to say, something to read, or something to do is to give you something, to give you a pause and to reset yourself. So if there's anything that you're going to do tonight, you're going to go think about your own rituals and your own routines, and start doing it now, so that when you are showing up in these environments, whether it's sports or life, taking tests, speaking, having an honest conversation with somebody, anything that's deemed scary, you'll have these coping skills and these tools that you can refer back to and be like, okay, this makes me feel good in this moment. So hope that helped.
Yeah, and I just sent Coach K made a wonderful digital workbook for that workshop. I put the link in the chat. It's also in Classroom with the recording of the workshop. It's really awesome, and it actually was even inspired by some of the questions that our campus captains asked beforehand. So definitely check that out, because there's a lot of really cool resources in there. Okay. Maybe we can open up to some questions from the audience, maybe something that came up while the panelists were speaking. Feel free to, unmute yourself, raise your hand, send it in the chat, whatever feels best. But does anyone have a question for our panelists? Oh, Ansley, I can't hear you. Can anyone?
Maybe just type it in the chat and then we can go
Can you
off
hear
of
me
that.
now?
Oh, there we go. Yeah, you're good.
Okay, so this is actually like for my brother, but he had an old coach that like completely destroyed his confidence, because the coach would just kind of give him false hope and then just completely destroy it. And now he's having like kind of a hard time to rebuild that confidence and like performing the best that he knows he can. So like what are some tricks he can do to rebuild the confidence and perform at the level that he knows he has the ability to?
I love this question, and honestly, I think I'm gonna just say my little spiel and then throw it to Whitney, because Whitney, you've already kind of like talked about this, about past experiences. But here's the deal with having somebody giving you like that false hope. You have to remember that at the end of the day, it all comes back to you decide who and what gets your attention, and you decide that. So yes, do I feel terrible that like your brother had this coach? Of course I do. My coach was the same. Negative words. It was a terrible experience. But at the end of the day, am I going to allow that person dictate the version of me that's going to show up for my life? So something that I did from a very young age, and Whitney did hit on it, was kind of creating like that I call it a confidence list, or for like my younger teams, I call it a confidence cup, where literally like you just draw a picture of a cup on a piece of paper and you just start pouring in things that you have done in your life that have made you proud, or things in your life that have helped to build up your confidence, even if they're things that other people didn't recognize, but they're things that made you feel good. Like, it goes in the confidence cup, and display that cup somewhere, so that on the days where you're feeling like you're lacking, or you're feeling like it's a really hard road ahead, you just look at the cup. Or I like to tell people, take a big swig of something that's in your cup and move forwards with that mindset of, okay, I did that really hard thing, or I did that, and like that makes me awesome. But it's remembering that you choose who and what gets to kind of like affect you. And I know that's really hard at your age. I know it comes with maturity and it comes with age. I mean, I'm almost 40. And if I was your age, there's no way that I would be listening to somebody be like, yeah, okay, like I'm gonna go take a big swig of my confidence cup. But I will tell you that, like, if you do these things over and over again, like, they will help you. And at the end of the day, it's like, whose voice is in here? Is it yours, or is it somebody else's voice? And at the end of the day, like, you're the main character of your story. So your voice should be the loudest. And if your voice is negative, then that's like a different conversation that we can have. But if your voice is the one that you're hearing the most of, even if there's other noise coming in, it's like, at the end of the day, it's like, nope, these are my thoughts, and this is how I'm gonna move forwards with this.
I want to offer up another kind of exercise. Coach K just kind of gave an exercise. I want to offer up another one too, because we all think differently, and sometimes an exercise works for certain things and it, doesn't for others. And sometimes our brains just think differently. So I like to make a T chart, and I have clients do this all the time, where we put the poison thoughts on one side and we put the powerful thoughts on the other. So for your brother, he might put all these poison thoughts that he has about his confidence. And then on the other side, in the power side, he's going to write what he wants to think instead. So he's not coming up with like powerful thoughts all on his own. He's coming up with, what do I want to think instead? So instead of, I'm not confident, maybe the powerful thought is, I believe in myself and what I can do. Right? Like, it may not be true at the time, but what you're trying to do is get your brain to start thinking in that powerful space versus that poison space. So that when those poison thoughts come up, you can go, oh, wait a minute, that's a poison thought. What do I want instead? I want a power thought. What were some of those ones I wrote down? And that's something you can, put up around your room, or, somewhere on your phone as well. So that's another strategy that I want to offer up, because that's a pretty powerful one if you can get to a space of replacing those poison thoughts with the powerful ones.
Awesome. Yeah,
Thank
I want to
you.
make sure. Oh, yeah, good. I want to make sure we get to as many of these as we can. Maybe Whitney, toss Lindsay's question back to you. She said, how do you strive to do well without getting in your head? Where do you draw the line? So like what would go on each side of the T chart for that kind of situation?
Sure. So on the poison thought, it would just be all those things that like get inside your head. So like I'm not good enough. I can't, like I'll just take a runner for instance, because that's kind of my like vein here. But like I can't run fast, or I can't complete this workout, or a lot of I can'ts, we think in a lot of ways, I can't, or I'm not, fill in the blank. So that might be the poison side. The powerful side might be for, I'm not good enough. Maybe the powerful side is what I want instead is I know that I can try my best at what I'm trying to accomplish. So it's not even that like you're saying, oh, I'm good enough to do this thing. You're saying I am willing to show up powerfully for myself and willing to do the best I can with my capabilities. So is that helpful? Is that like an example?
I think so. I hope Natalie does too. Awesome. All right. Oh, I'm sorry, Lindsay, not Natalie. Natalie's question is up next. Elias, maybe I'll toss this one to you. How do you help teammates or friends that are struggling with performance anxiety? What advice would you give them? How would you handle that?
This is hard with football because guys, I feel like we're not very good at sharing our emotions, especially on a football team. So I don't think I ever got a teammate that kind of uh, openly said that they were struggling with anxiety. But I think I do remember like a couple of teammates in the middle of a game. I played receiver, so I had a couple of my receiver friends. We were playing in our bowl game, and they had a couple of big drops. And obviously, fans at Miami aren't very nice. So if you have a couple bad plays, they'll let you know. And at the end of the day, we're just kids. We're college athletes, and you have grown people saying very mean and nasty things to kids. I think my strategy was always just being just kind of what we were just talking about now, reminding yourself why you're a good athlete and everything you've done in the past. That was kind of my way of going about it with my teammates. Just reminding them of everything they've done to that point, reminding them of a great play they had a game ago, reminding them of everything they did in practice that week. I think maybe Coach K and Whitney have better examples, but that's just kind of how I went about it. How personally I would have, I brought up my own confidence, which was kind of watching videos of me doing great plays at games. Obviously, you can't do that in the middle of a game, but just, you know, man, I remember when you had that great catch, last game, or remember when you did this, or, you're here for a reason. Um, remember all the great things you've done to help us get to this point. So that was kind of my way of going about it. But I don't know if Coach K and Whitney have other suggestions.
To be honest, like just something that I post a lot about this on my page. It's just, sometimes people want to be heard more than they want to be fixed or they want to be like helped. So just like being there, like if somebody's going through performance anxiety or someone's having like a hard time, it's just being there and offering up some support, offering up some like a space to kind of like, to be able to vent or chill or sit in silence, right? So something that I usually use with people in even in my own life is if I know that someone's struggling, it's entering into a conversation, asking what they want, right? Do you want sympathy? Do you want me to just sympathize with you and like let you kind of vent? Do you want support? Meaning, do you want me to hold your hand with it? Do you want me to help you? Want me to walk alongside you on this journey? Or do you want a solution? Like, do you want, some tips and tricks that like work for me? And I do that with my own athletes when I'm working one-on-one. It's, sometimes they don't want my advice right away. They just want to know that they're heard and seen and valued. And sometimes when people are going through performance anxiety, it's just because we don't feel like we're being heard or seen, and we're just frustrated and we're failing and we don't know what to do. But just being there and offering space is usually the best thing that you can do.
Yeah, I think the other thing is just sharing a little bit of your vulnerability and your story. So, letting them know they're not alone, that you felt this way before, you are feeling this way too. And, you know, using that as an invitation to them to say, hey, are you feeling this way? Have you felt this way? How can we help one another support each other in this? So I think being vulnerable is a really big piece of that too. And Coach K touched on that. So that's a really good piece.
All right, thank you. So Olivia asked, how do you approach an event when it's your last one before you retire? One of my teammates just cried all before the event and didn't perform well because of all the emotions. So what advice would you have for someone who's maybe in their senior season, approaching that last race, game, whatever the case may be?
So I had something similar happen to me within this last year. I was inducted into my college Hall of Fame for swimming. And when I got the notification, the email saying that my team was being inducted, I thought it was a mistake. I couldn't believe it. And then B, I remembered back to that specific year and that team. And I remembered that I had had strep throat at conference that year, and that I had performed and swam, but I didn't perform well. Like I didn't feel like I gave, much to the team. So I had a lot of thoughts of, you know, am I worthy of this? Should I even be getting this? Am I good enough to get this? Like, I was on the team, but did I give enough to the team in order to be on this list of amazing women, et cetera, et cetera. And I really had to check myself, and I had to come back to the present and think about every single thing that I had done to show up for my team, to show up for myself, every practice, every meet, every connection I had outside of practice with my teammates. And just think about all of that I gave to my swimming career in college to be a part of this amazing team. And I had to really stay in that space of all of the things that I had given to the space, but all the things that I had also like taken away from it, and what I was blessed to take away from being in that, space of being part of that team. And so that was something that allowed me then to show up at the event and be present and be grateful and be happy and celebrate. And so that's my suggestion, is to really stay focused on all the things that you gave to that space, all the things you gained from that space, and to really try to stay in the present of celebration and gratitude when that time comes.
Thank you. Yeah, I put in the chat too. Whitney wrote an awesome blog post about that very experience. I put that in the chat as well. So definitely check that out. We probably have time for one or two more. What advice do you have for someone returning to sports after not making a team that they wanted to make? Or maybe not performing how they wanted to?
Like I said earlier, I think something that I always encourage uh, players to do uh, is talk to their coaches. Right at the end of the day, coaches make the decision, and I'm a big advocate of going to coaches, talking to them. Coach K gave a great tip, which I never did, but I think would have definitely been useful when I was in that situation of, writing down a list of things that you want to discuss. I think, what did I not, what didn't I do to make the team? What could have I improved on? Um, just kind of breaking it down with them, sitting down with them, seeing where you can improve. you know, what things you did well, what things you didn't do well. And I think that's kind of the experience I had when I was in maybe getting enough playing time, when I wasn't maybe getting the opportunities that I wanted. And I think that coaches really appreciated that. They could tell that I was interested. They could tell that I wanted to improve. And that's a resource that I, you know, based on my experience, I really recommend.
Okay, maybe we have time to throw one more, a really quick one. What are some methods you can use when you're feeling anxious mid-game and can't really take a long time to reset yourself?
So I like to, again, it's going to come back to the rituals and the routines, but it's having something for in the moment, something that you know that you can do. And it's like creating your own little, you know, reset moment or reset ritual. I like to use the acronym or the word TAB, but I spell it TAAB, and I'll put it in the chat. The acronym, the word TAB is like slang for checking in on somebody. So like if I went to go like scout a team, I'm taking tabs on them, right? So the acronym I use is TAAB, and it's to T is identifying like the trigger, like the thing that is going to rock you, the thing that's going to get you to feel a little in the moment, like you've lost your concentration. You have to know what's going to set you off, or you have to know like identify the things that might throw you for a loop. And that again, that's like where those brain dumping, like the what if situations, it might be a good activity for you to do to find out what are the what ifs that are really taking up a lot of head and heart space. So then AAB stand for action, affirmation, and breathe. It's literally the same thing as think, say, read, and do. It's just in a different way because I've learned that athletes take on to certain things and everyone's different, right? So action could be what is the thing that you're going to physically do in the moment, right? You can crack your knuckles, tuck in your shirt, you know, fix your pony, bend down and tie your shoe, take a breath. The affirmation is again, what are you going to think or what are you going to say? Like, what's the word? I am confident. Maybe my word in college was faith and focus. Those were my go-to words. Now at 39 years old, my word is breathe. Anytime I'm starting to get a little like ahead of myself, I'm like, all right, Kristyna, take a breath. And so it's like I say the word breathe and then I actually breathe. And then in tab, I do encourage the breath to always be something um, of an option because again, it brings you back to that present moment. So TAAB, trigger, action, affirmation, and breathe.
I love that. That's great. I'm going to use that too. Cool. Well, thank you guys so much. This was a great conversation. I'm so glad that the three of you were willing to serve on this panel. We got through most of the questions. If we did not get to your question, please shoot me a Slack message, an email, and I'd be happy to put you in touch with our panelists. And if other questions come up, I definitely am happy to put you in touch with everyone. Have a great night. And if you're using this as your November activity, don't forget to fill out the activity report form. Yeah, thank you guys for coming.